Hi, everyone. Welcome to 4-H Interviews with Pros. Tonight, we are excited to have Brenton Allred from Juab County 4-H here to interview Anthony Smith, an international program manager from Cargill Incorporated. Thank you both so much for being here. For everyone who's live watching with us, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the comments and we will be sure to answer them at the end of the interview. So Brenton, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Anthony, for coming. And
Absolutely.
so could you tell us a little bit about what you do as an international program manager?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm grateful for the opportunity. So I work at Cargill. I've been here for about 4 years now. As international program manager, essentially my role is working as a liaison between our foreign sales offices. So we have offices all over Asia, and I work as a liaison between them and our pricing and availability teams here. So essentially, we harvest so many cattle per day in the US and in Canada. And so I provide availability on products that they're looking for. You know, you go to the grocery store, you look at ribeyes and strips and different things like that. And then there's specific items that we specifically sell to Asia. And so I look at the availability going out, you know, several months or several weeks and give them availability. And then I also look at the pricing based on the market and where we're at. And that's kind of my day-to-day, giving them pricing. And then as well, a typical day, I respond to a lot of emails. Of course, a lot of my colleagues that I work with are overseas. And so their hours are completely different, right? Some of them are 12 hours ahead. They're asleep while I'm working. So it's sometimes we have nightly meetings. So late at night, I'll jump on, but I get to collaborate with them, go back and forth with email. And then we have teams here in the US as well, who, you know, put orders in, working with documentation and customs for exports, and then as well freight forwarding. So getting products, beef products on ocean freighters. So it's a lot of different moving pieces throughout what I do.
That's really cool. And so what makes you excited about your job?
I think for me, what gets me most excited is being able to solve problems on a daily basis. So you can imagine, you know, in the last couple of years during the pandemic, there was a lot of problems that happened. People would go to the grocery store and products were missing, right? So you can imagine trying to get a supply chain from the US or Canada to go all the way to Asia. We faced a lot of disruptions there too. So I really love collaborating with people, figuring out ways of, hey, how do we actually get the product delivered? And then as well, there's some great opportunities to participate in different groups at Cargill. They call them business resource groups. One that I'm really closely tied to is a Hispanic Latino Council. And I've been able to help move a lot of different things forward with the Hispanic Latino Council, with, you know, talent recruitment and being able to help Hispanic Latino talent within Cargill do better, but also enabling like translation technology at our plant facilities, because we have a pretty large Hispanic Latino population that works for Cargill. So lots of opportunities to get involved with different business resource groups with Cargill as well.
And so like when you were a youth, did you like doing things that you do in your job?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. When I was growing up, and I actually grew up in Cache Valley, close to Utah State for a little bit, and I always wanted to be a vet. That was my plan. I was like, okay, what am I going to do to be a vet? And then I actually had our family moved, a lot of things changed. I actually ended up being an art major. And it was like, oh, big, huge change, right? But came from an agricultural background. So ended up coming back to my roots in agribusiness. And I think a big thing, I really like to help people. So as a youth, I always like to help people, gain people's trust. How do I, you know, show up and help people with their problems, right? And I see that a lot in my work. And then also being able to be part of a company that feeds the world, right? Cargill has businesses all over the world, a lot of different things, whether it's oil, salt. And, you know, when I started with Cargill, I was like, you know, I know it's big, but when I found out that Cargill touches at least 90% of your food, whether it's salt, oil, meat, sugars, you name it, even when you go to a fast food place, right? You go to McDonald's, the oil that's used for the fries, a lot of that comes from Cargill. The beef that's in the hamburgers, right? All of the eggs that are in, say, the breakfast burritos or the breakfast sandwiches, those all come from Cargill facilities. So it, a lot of those areas I never knew that I'd be part of a company that had such a wide breadth across the world and helping feed the world.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so what was the education you had to get and training to do your job?
Yeah, so I studied international agribusiness at Utah State. I also minored in entrepreneurship and in Portuguese. So I actually lived abroad for a little while in Brazil, and that's where I learned Portuguese. And then I solidified Spanish. I actually worked for JBS, which is another beef company. So they have a facility close to Utah State, and I worked a summer there, just working on the harvest floor. So was able to solidify my Spanish there, but I also was able to live abroad. I was part of the SEED program at Utah State, and I lived in the Philippines for about 5 months. And so I did a lot of things even before I got into, say, my technical career, right? And I was able to advance pretty quickly within the company, going from, an associate sales position going into an international program manager position. And I credit it a lot to those experiences that I decided to have before I even got done with school, right? So being able to live in the Philippines and help with business development in an international country, I think really helped prepare me for this position. But then, those key classes at Utah State that helped me learn about economics and agriculture and the different areas that now I work in really helped set me up for success in my job today.
Yeah. And so like what's your average pay for someone that works in your field?
Yeah, so in the field, working at Cargill and in the food business, right, agriculture's a great field to go into, right? When you look across the pandemic and how many jobs were paused or people got laid off, everybody needs to eat, right? Food's always going to be needed. And so for pay, when you start at Cargill, if, it can go anywhere from, if you're doing an hourly job, you can start making, $17 an hour, or if you start out in a salaried position, starting, if you look at average salary at Cargill, it goes starting out in an associate position, $50,000, and there's a lot of potential to grow from there. And I was looking, you had in the question, compared to Utah average, right? It can go anywhere for an associate position, going from $17,000 up to $72,000 for an average associate position in Utah. One thing I like to add as well is I felt very spoiled. I was married. We had just gotten married, started our family in Utah when I got done with school. And Cargill actually moved us across the country to Miami, Florida, when I started with the company. And then as well, the benefits packages are huge as well. So there's a lot of added benefits as well, being able to work for a company like Cargill.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that there's so much more too. And so what skills do you have that are necessary to succeed in your career?
Yeah, so I think for me, I really love to engage and interact with people from different backgrounds and cultures, right? And there's, people from all different levels of experience or life backgrounds that work at Cargill, especially as it's a global company, right? There's over 150,000 employees across the world, right, that work for Cargill. So there's a lot of different backgrounds and people that I can learn from. And so I really enjoy interacting with people from different backgrounds. I think as well, being able to speak multiple languages set me up for success there, right? And then as well, just being able to learn, right? Asking questions, being willing to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Could you please show me how? Right? And being willing to go in and just ask those questions and being open about it, right? But then also having confidence when I do know something and stand up and say, hey, this is kind of how it's happening in our business right now. How can we work together? And also being a team player, I think, is a huge part as well.
Yeah, those are definitely important skills. And so what is the biggest challenges that you face?
Yeah, so I would say, I mentioned this a little bit before, is the supply chain, right? As you look across, the entire supply chain throughout the world, people were complaining about, oh, Amazon orders are late, right? But then you look at beef, right? If it's supposed to be getting to Asia, you have chilled beef and you have frozen beef that's supposed to be getting over, right? Frozen beef, it's like, oh, we have a little bit of wiggle room. We have chilled beef, you've got to get it over as quick as you can. And so when you have disruptions, say if there's strikes or issues on the coasts, when people are trying, we need to get product loaded onto ships. Hey, if there's anything that goes wrong along that way, we've got to keep a handle on where product's going and making sure that it's getting to customers and that it's still good product, right? That product isn't going bad. If you've ever smelled rotten meat, it's not a good thing. So you want to make sure that stuff is getting there fresh and getting there in good quality, and also what the customer is expecting, right? You have a reputation that you need to uphold. So I think the biggest challenges are just making sure that the supply chain is flowing correctly. And then as well, during the pandemic, there was a lot of demand for beef. So switching around, there was more demand for different cuts that went from, restaurants were closing down. So that had to go to supermarkets because a lot of people were like, oh, I've got to cook at home now. So I've got to cook, get it from the supermarket. So having those shifts and changes in the supply chain as well are challenging, but also exciting, right? But I'd say overall, just making sure that the supply chain is running and then dealing with the challenges that accompany that.
Yeah, it's definitely important. I wouldn't want bad meat.
Yeah.
So I agree, that's important.
Yep.
And so, like, what's the most valuable reward you've got from this career choice?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think for me, what's most valuable is to work for a company that truly wants to nourish the world in a sustainable and a respectful way, right? Making sure that, if we're going to be harvesting animals, that we do it in a respectful way. If we're going to be having, getting products from farmers, we want to make sure that we're helping farmers be the most successful that they can, right? If we're getting grains, how do we be respectful of the resources that we're taking from, right? And I think the valuable part is truly delivering on getting those products to our customers, and then seeing, supply chains being able to feed people around the world has really been rewarding. And also, like I said, interacting with global teams and people from different backgrounds and cultures is a really exciting part of my job as well.
Yeah. And so do you see remote work as an essential part of future careers in this field?
Yeah, so I'd say, during the pandemic, like before the pandemic, I never would have thought like remote work, right? But when the pandemic hit, like everything shut down. And it's funny because I was, getting ready to book my flights and getting ready to go to Asia on my first trip in my position. And it's like, well, it doesn't look like I'm going to be going to Asia anytime soon. And pretty quick thereafter, I was working full time from home. And I, so the entire company almost, overnight in a week said, hey, everyone that can be at home needs to be at home working. And so as we've come out of the pandemic, right, and as people started returning to the office, you got to see that not only for productivity in business, right, having flexible work schedules. Even today, my wife and I just recently had a baby about 3 weeks ago, and being able to be at home and work from home, but be able to help my wife, right, that's been a huge blessing and a huge benefit for working for Cargill. And we also had our first baby during the pandemic about 20 months ago. And so being able to be at home, it was like, oh yeah, this is the normal for me. I know a lot of people that had kids before the pandemic, and that wasn't even heard of, right? People went back to work, and you weren't there to help your spouse out with those different duties. So I'd say, especially as you're looking at a global organization, there are jobs that are specifically posted that it can be 100% remote. For me, I love collaborating with people. I love getting together with people. So I still love having that opportunity to go into the office or to travel and work with different teams. But I would say remote work, absolutely. There are people that are introverts that say, hey, I don't really like being like in public or with other people. So I'd rather be at home, right? And they are very successful working from home. And as a food business and a global business, I think it's naturally a part of the world we live in today now, right? Where remote work technology makes it possible where people can work from anywhere in the world. I was actually on a call, I think it was just yesterday, and the leader, she talked about, hey, like when the pandemic hit, we're living in a country where there's a lot of political unrest, and we decided, what are we going to do for our family? They ended up moving to the beach, and their kids were doing school full-time remotely, so they lived on a beach for the past year and a half, which like I would love to live on the beach, right, and be able to work remotely. So people are able to have that flexibility. We're able to go and visit family, but I'm still able to work when we go travel. So I'd say it's an essential part of the world that we live in today.
Yeah, that's nice. And so what can young people do to prepare to work remotely in this field in the future?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is being able to learn how to interact still, right? Because technology, it's a huge benefit, right? But you also have to learn how to leverage it, right? Learn how to have conversations and be able to conduct yourself professionally, say on a camera. Pretend like you're talking to someone in person still, right? Be willing to turn your camera on, right? Today, it's so easy just to shut your camera or just leave your camera off, but it's much more engaging if you can be able to see the other person on the other side. Being able to, be willing to learn those different skills. I know there's different Toastmaster clubs that get together and learn how to do that. 4-H is great for that. FFA is great for that, right? So I think just being able to learn how to interact as if you were in person, right? And that way. Also, if you don't want to have as many of those interactions, right? There are positions out there that, there's data entry or there's data analytics that if you hone those skills as far as mathematics or having that analytical mindset, that's essential as well. So learning how to work on your own, but also learning how to collaborate, right? If you're in class and you have a group project, do your part, right? When you get together, you have your portion that you have to do your part and show up and then say, hey, is there anything else I can help with? So I think that's crucial as you look across a virtual environment, is how do you show up as yourself, but also how do you show up as a team member?
Yeah, thank you. So that's all the questions I have for you today. And so I'd like to turn the time back over to Kelsey.
Awesome. Thank you, Brenton.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Anthony, so much for such great information. It was so thoughtful. I really, really appreciated your answers tonight. And for everybody who has been watching this video, I want to let you know that we have a few programs at Utah State University in our College of Agricultural and Applied Sciences, like Anthony studied in as well. And if you're interested to know more about the programs that we have available, we have a link to our college in the description of this video, so you can follow that link. And then also we have the link to the Remote Online Initiative program if you want to learn more about what you can do to prepare to work remotely. And then lastly, we have a really short survey. It takes 1 to 2 minutes. And if you've watched this video, make sure to fill that survey out because you will be entered for a chance to win a Cotopaxi backpack. So make sure to fill that survey out. And even if you watched the last 4-H interviews with pros as well, fill it out again. The more times that you complete that survey per video that you watch, the more chances you have to win that backpack. So please fill that survey out. We want to hear from you guys. So thanks again to both Brenton and Anthony for being here tonight. I really appreciate both of your time. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And if anybody has questions after the Facebook Live, feel free to put it in the chat. I'll try to go back there afterwards and connect and answer your questions if you have anything that you'd like answered there.
Thank you so much. That's so nice of you. We appreciate it. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Y'all have a great night. Bye.